Hey everyone, and welcome to Fermentation Friday. Today I'm going to be talking about different ways that you can flavor your second ferment of your kombucha. Reading online, I found lots of really great tips of different ways that you can flavor your brew, and I thought that I'd share them all with you here. One of my absolute favorite ways to flavor my kombucha so far has been to use ginger. One of my favorite ways to flavor the kombucha is to use fresh ginger. It gives it a really nice spiciness, and then I find the flavors are really complementary. When I do it, I make sure to put in lots of ginger, and I either chop it up in cubes like this, or else I'll grate it. And I add a little bit of sugar because I do like my kombucha sweet. The ginger is just really nice, and I find it to be a really fun flavor, especially if you're gonna mix your finished kombucha with something else. Another super simple way to flavor your kombucha is to just use juice. You just pour it directly into the bottle, and it's that simple. You can use homemade fresh juice, or you can use any sort of store-bought juice. People always recommend to use the more natural juice, but I'm all for using what's on hand. Another way to flavor that I've been experimenting with lately has been to use a syrup. This is just a syrup I had kicking around in my fridge that I've tried out, and it was really nice. I've also used syrups out of my canned peaches, and that gave it a really nice flavor and was also a really good way to use up what would have just kind of been a waste product in my house, at least. The one thing to remember when you're using syrup, though, as opposed to juice, is because the syrup's so sweet and so concentrated, you only want to use a little bit. You don't want to use the same amounts that you use with the juice. It doesn't get any easier than just plain fresh fruit. You just take it and pop it in. You want to wash it, make sure that you're not going to be introducing any sort of impurities to your brew. You don't want any sort of molds to form in the second fermentation. But I've tried a ton of different things because I've had a lot of fruit kicking around the house. I'm really excited to try these grapes this week. This is probably the main batch that I'm gonna make. But whatever you have, just pop it in there and give it a go. That's one of the things that's so fun about doing the homemade kombucha. You can really experiment with it in ways that maybe you wouldn't necessarily want to when you have to pay $8 a bottle. If you don't have any fresh fruit around the house, you can also use dried fruit, either store-bought or homemade. This is just a dried mango that I had, and I really like the mango flavor with the kombucha. I really like the sweetness, the way it complements the tartness of the kombucha. One thing to consider when using the dried fruit is because when it's dried like this, it's going to be quite small, and once it absorbs the liquid, it is going to expand. If you have a small mouthed bottle like what I'm using here, you want to make sure that there's lots of space around the fruit before you stick it in there, because it's going to swell, and then you don't want to have troubles getting it out and cleaning your bottles. If you have an open mouth bottle, then you don't have to worry quite as much, but definitely keep in mind the fact that it's going to start this big and it's going to get substantially bigger. The final way that I've seen to flavor kombucha is to use either herbs or spices. Right now, fall's begun. It's officially pumpkin spice season, so why not try pumpkin spice kombucha? Just use a spice blend into the kombucha and it'll flavor it up. If you use loose spices like this, it is potentially going to be a little bit hard to filter it out. You could also flavor it almost with like a tea bag. If you don't have an actual pumpkin spice mix at home, it's a super simple blend. All it is cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, cloves. You can blend it to whatever you like the flavor to be. Another really fun spice flavor to try would be a chai tea style one. You could use all the spices if you have them loose, or even just use a pre-made chai mix. I know I can get a herbal chai mix, which is basically just all the spices without the tea in it. For me, one of the funnest things about homebrewing the kombucha is all the experimenting that you get to do. I know it tastes really good just as is, but it's also fun to try to flavor it and find a really nice combo for what it is that you want to do. I've tried a variety of these. I haven't yet tried doing the spices, and I know you can also use dried herbs too, like dried mint and things like that. when I flavor my kombucha, because I have the spout on my brewing vessel, that makes it really easy to just empty it out. I actually just add the fruit directly into the bottles and then pour it from the bottle into the kombucha. I do that to try to disturb it as little as possible. There's actually not a bad amount of carbonation in my kombucha after the first ferment, but I have been having issues getting a really strong carbonation on the second ferment. So to, you know, give it a fighting chance, I try not to disturb it too much. I'm also not too worried about filtering out yeast and things like that. You know, like especially when I do the ginger, I get a sediment layer on the bottom, and you know, like I'll leave kind of that last little bit in there. Sometimes I'll drink it. You know, you do what you want, right? Like do what tastes good for you. These are all the ways that I've learned to flavor kombucha from looking online, but I'd be excited to know if there's any that I've missed, and love it if you could tell me below. And I'm also wondering, what is your guys' favorite flavor? My favorite flavor right now is ginger, but I've heard that the grape is really good, and I also really like mango. I'm excited to experiment with mixing them together as well as trying new flavors, so definitely tell me below what is your guys' favorite flavor so I can try it out too. And I will see you next week for my next Fermentation Friday. Have a good week. What flavor are you making?
Middle is a what? Ginger?
Ginger.
Oh yeah, ginger too.